Ashton from Valkyrie Investment Group here. All right, so I posted a short explanation on how we buy and why we buy apartment complexes, and my inbox was immediately flooded with questions. So I just want to take a little time to explain, how we're creating passive income from real estate. Maybe you've been, downtown lately. Maybe you've looked around and seen all the apartment complexes, massive apartment complex, and maybe even wondered, wow, whoever owns these must be filthy rich. It can't be any one person. It has to be like a corporation or a business. I mean, that's kind of what I thought anyway. Well, believe it or not, 80 to 90% of those buildings are actually owned by normal everyday people just like you and me. And in this video, I'm going to explain how they're doing it and how you can get involved to create that kind of passive income, for you and your family. Now, those of you that know me, you're probably thinking, well, this guy has spent the last 20 years, jumping out of planes, shooting guns and kicking in doors. What does he know about investing and creating passive income? Fair enough, but I've learned a lot over the last few years. My brother and I started investing in real estate, 2018, the end of 2018. And the idea was simple, right? We wanted to buy enough rentals, enough real estate to supplement our W-2 jobs and then spend less time working and more time with family, more time traveling and, doing the stuff we love. In the last couple of years, we found out that acquiring, rehabbing, and managing rental properties was another whole job in and of itself. And that was the exact opposite of what we wanted, what we were trying to do. But as Plato said, necessity is the mother of invention. And so that forced us to start looking at other strategies. So we began focusing on creating, how can we create passive income through real estate? And this led us to apartment syndications. And that's what I want to discuss here today, how to create truly passive income through investing in apartment syndications. In fact, our partners have been able to use this strategy that I'm about to explain to create monthly cash flow without ever having to do any real work. How? Well, through the purchase of apartment complexes, by adding value to them, raising the rents, and then selling them several years later for a profit. And the reality is that the majority of large commercial real estate is owned not by a single person or a corporation, but by groups of investors like our partners. Now, these groups are commonly referred to as real estate syndications. And you probably heard of, news syndications or TV syndications, which is basically a term to describe content being pooled together. But in this case, a real estate syndication is pooling not content, but investor capital. In other words, instead of, you taking your money to go buy an individual rental and then doing all the work and receiving the cash flow, but dealing with those midnight calls and stuff, you're pooling your capital together along with multiple other investors to buy a cash flowing asset. And since you're all investing together, you share in the ownership as well as the returns, which we're going to dive into here shortly. But first, let's walk through, an example syndication to kind of get a better understanding, a better look of how this works. All right, so let's say that the lead syndicator is also known as the sponsor team, and they're the ones finding the deal, analyzing the profits and losses, creating the business plan, managing the contractors, the leasing and all that. Let's say they find a property that meets the deal criteria. And let's say this property is listed for, $10 million to keep it nice and round numbers. Well, they probably need approximately $2.5 million to put down as a down payment. And then let's say they need another $1.5 million for renovations and improvements to raise the value. All right, so all in, they need about $4 million to close and execute on the value add business plan on this particular apartment complex. Now, it's highly unlikely that any single individual has this much capital as well as the experience needed to execute on a business plan like this. So instead, the sponsor team decides to do a syndication, and they decide to invite passive investors to join the project. Now, maybe I put in 50,000, maybe you put in 50,000, someone else puts in 200,000, 100,000, and so on. But we're the passive investors. The sponsor team, on the other hand, now they're the active investors because they have an active role in the day-to-day operation. They're executing on the business plan. They're managing the finances. They're managing the legal. They're managing the property and all that stuff that I mentioned before. But since we have no active role, we simply put our money into the deal and we wait and collect our checks each month. We are the passive investors. For the passive investors, we receive zero of the hassle from the tenants, meaning none of the hashtag landlord problems, or leaky faucets or loud complaints, all that stuff. Now, depending on the total capital needed in a real estate syndication, it can be made up of hundreds of investors. Really just depends on the deal itself. All right, so then the sponsor group creates a pass-through entity, and that's typically in the form of an LLC, and that's going to buy the property. Then the sponsor team also works with an attorney to create a PPM, or a private placement memorandum, which is basically a legal document that spells out the specifics, like how the investors are tied to the investment, the general partners, active investors are what they're responsible for, how the investors are represented, risks involved, all that stuff. Now, because the LLC is a pass-through entity, we, as the passive investors, get the benefits of direct ownership in that underlying real estate asset. And really, this is what makes it superior to REITs, also known as real estate investment trusts. That syndications are a long-term investment strategy. Now, that's not long-term like a retirement fund, but more like 3, 5, maybe 10 years, not 60 years. You don't have to wait till you're 60. But depending on the business plan, it could be 3 to 5, 10 years. So what that means is that once you place your investment capital into a syndication, you should not expect to see that back until the property is refinanced or sold. And that's one major difference between like stocks and bonds. You invest in stocks and bonds, it's more liquid, where you can pull your capital out if needed pretty quickly. All right, so how much can you, or how much should you invest in a syndication? Well, that usually depends on the deal. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on you and what you're comfortable with. But the sponsors will decide what the minimum investment is. And typically we've seen a minimum to be around $25,000 to $50,000 per investor, but anything over the minimum is usually acceptable. All right, so what about the returns, right? I mean, everybody wants to know the returns. How much do you stand to make when investing in a syndication? Well, like all investments, it depends. It depends on the individual syndication and how it's structured. But let's take a little look at an example to give you a general benchmark of what to expect. So to keep it simple, let's just use a syndication with a 5-year hold. That's pretty standard in apartment syndications. All right, so this syndication has a 6% preferred annual return from cash flow and a 12% preferred average annual return and a 1.6 times equity multiple. All right, so let's break that down. What does all that mean? All right, so let's keep these numbers round. Let's say you invest $100,000 into the syndication with a preferred return of 6%, meaning the sponsors don't see any profits until the passive investors are paid their 6% preferred return. You can expect to get 6% of your initial invested capital in passive income each year. In other words, $6,000 per year, usually paid by month or by quarter in passive income, truly passive. Over the 5-year hold, this equals to $30,000 in completely passive income. All right, so then there's the profit at the sale of the property at year 5. To find out how much profit you make as a passive investor, just take the average annual return in the projections. In this case, it's 12% preferred return, and subtract the 6% you would have already received over the 5-year hold. So at sale, you would expect to make another 6% on your original investment. And basically what that means is at the end of the syndication, you would have gotten your original capital, or your original $100,000 invested. You would have got that back, plus $30,000 in cash flow over the 5 years, as well as another $30,000 in profit from the sale. Add all that up, and your original $100,000 has turned into $160,000 in the span of 5 years. Another way to look at that is to take the $60,000 total profit that you made over the 5 years and divide it by the 5-year hold period. This would give you your average annual return of 12%. All right, so what about the equity multiple, right? I know I mentioned that earlier. Well, the equity multiple is just a simple way of telling passive investors how much their capital will multiply over the life of the investment. In this case, with a 1.6 times equity multiple, we can expect a $100,000 investment to turn into $160,000 over a 5-year hold. That's pretty simple. Just multiply it by your original investment. All right. So now you know what a syndication is, what it's used for, and what the projected returns look like. But before we finish up, I just want to add a couple more key pieces of information that I think are pretty valuable before they're pretty important before you jump into something like this. All right, first off, a lot of people don't know this. You can invest in syndications with your retirement fund. Now, not all retirement funds qualify, but you can use that money that is sitting in your retirement funds earning 7 to 10% average annual return. You can use that and roll that into what's called a self-directed IRA. And then you can use that self-directed IRA and you get to dictate where those funds get invested. If you're interested in this method, we actually have a blog explaining the process, as well as provide a link on our website to help people get started in using, their IRA to invest. It's a great way of growing your retirement fund. Another important thing to note is that because you're investing in an LLC, a pass-through entity, you get all the tax benefits of investing in real estate, which can be fairly substantial if you know real estate. But that's a whole nother topic for another video, and we don't have time just right now. But I highly encourage those interested in investing in real estate to talk to their CPA about the tax benefits, especially with regards to multifamily, because the larger the property, the more tax deductions. Lastly, you might be asking yourself if real estate syndications are the right strategy for you. Well, here's some points to consider. First, syndications tie up that investment capital for years at a time. You should only invest in syndications with money you don't need, for the next 5 to 10 years. Also, it kind of goes without saying, if you only have $50,000 in your savings, then maybe a syndication is not right for you just yet. We always like to recommend that, people have an emergency fund as well as adequate savings, and then maybe some liquid investments before tying up all their capital in something like a long-term illiquid project like a syndication is. Hope that makes sense. Now, what are syndications good for? Okay, so syndications are good for creating passive income, truly passive income. They're good for sheltering your capital gains from taxes, which you don't see with stocks, and for multiplying your investment capital. And for the passive investor, this is all possible without having to worry about or deal with the hassles of being a landlord. Instead, you get to invest your capital, sit back, and enjoy the benefits of passive income in the form of distribution checks. Not bad. Syndications can also be really great for diversification as well. Why? Well, because every city, every state, every neighborhood is its own market. They're all different and they all grow in their own way. Plus, syndications allow you to invest in a number of different asset classes, from multifamily to self-storage, from mobile home parks to multi-use commercial buildings, and so on. There's really quite a few to choose from. All right, so the last thing I'll leave you with is, the importance of finding a good sponsor team. And I bring this up because, you could find the best deal in the best market with the best projected returns. But if the team can't manage it, can't execute the business plan, then those projections, they don't mean squat. And what I recommend is looking deeper than just the numbers, looking deeper than just the projected returns, because those can really be manipulated to show what they want. But instead, really look at the team's track record. How many deals have they done? How are those projects performing? And ultimately, can they do what they say they're going to do? All right, so there you go. Now you know what a real estate syndication is, how they work, whether they're a good fit for you and your family, because ultimately it comes down to that, and the projected returns you can expect, and as well as several key things to consider before jumping right in. My family and I discovered syndications and passive income a couple years ago, and I can tell you they've been a complete game changer for us. I was full-time military and my wife was a full-time elementary school teacher, but now we have passive income coming in each month, and unlike our smaller rental properties, we do almost zero work to receive that cash flow. In fact, because of this investment strategy, my wife was able to actually quit her job as a teacher and spend more time at home. So, it truly is passive. And when I'm home, I get to spend extra time traveling with my family. I don't have to spend so much time away. I get to spend time teaching my daughters to surf. I have a 3 and a 7-year-old, to surf and snowboard, and ultimately be there to enjoy being a father. All right. So I'm sure that this video has addressed a few high-level questions, but it probably also unveiled a bunch of follow-up questions, and I understand that. So I urge you to check out our free educational content on our website. We actually do quite a bit on that side, on the educating side. We have an ebook that my brother wrote on passive versus active investing. He's also written multiple blog posts, and they cover almost every topic related to syndications, wealth building, real estate. And then we host a mastermind meetup where we bring in professionals to talk about wealth building, syndications, all that stuff. But if you'd like a more comprehensive walkthrough of syndications and how they work, what I encourage you to do is to join our investor club. That's also on our website, and schedule a Zoom call with my brother or myself, and we can walk you through it. And lastly, if you like this video, please, be sure to hit the like button, share the video with others you think would benefit from this information, and please subscribe. We're here to help. We're here. We want to grow with you. So I'm Ashton with Valkyrie Investment Group. Thanks for watching. And remember, invest smarter, earn passively, and live the life you deserve. Live a fuller life. Thanks, guys. Take care.